Hey guys, tonight we drift deep into the folds of time, over the warm breath of the Indian Ocean, to follow ancient mariners who lashed whole tree trunks together with jungle vines and set out with no maps, no GPS, and not the faintest clue whether their sandals would survive the journey. This is a voyage measured not in hours, but in the sigh of the wind and the slow creak of wood, where the sun's last light melts into a quiet shimmer on the waves. You can almost taste the salt in the air, and if you can't, you may have forgotten to pack your imagination, which means you wouldn't last long out here. Maybe half a day. Before you settle in, take a second to like the video, but only if you truly enjoy what I make. And drop a comment telling me where you're re-listening from, and what time of day it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft ocean hum, and let's slip into tonight's journey together. The air is warm and still, like the pause before a deep inhale. Beneath your feet, thick vines bind logs into a floating grid, still fragrant with green sap. Torches at the bow sway lazily, their gold light trembling across the water as if the raft itself is breathing. Somewhere behind you, the shore is shrinking. It is not a dramatic farewell, just a slow fade of tree line and sand, like a watercolor left out in the rain. The hum of cicadas from the forest grows fainter, replaced by the low rolling hush of the ocean swell. It is said that more than 1,500 years ago, Austronesian sailors departed from islands far to the east, from places like Borneo and Sulawesi, on vessels not much different from the one you stand on now. They crossed the Indian Ocean long before the word global meant anything more than round. You notice how simple everything is here. No carved figureheads, no painted hulls, just the raw geometry of timber and vine. The sail is a rectangle of woven palm leaf, stiff but fragrant, its edges uneven where the leaves overlap. The lightest touch of breeze makes it rustle, a sound that feels almost like turning a page in a very large, very old book. You wonder if someone, somewhere on a different shore, is turning the same kind of page at this exact moment. At the raft's stern, an older man squats beside a clay jar, his fingers stained dark from handling charred wood. He tends a small ember inside the jar, coaxing it with a twist of dried leaf until it glows bright enough to light his face. The ember is not for warmth. The air is thick and gentle, but for the security of fire when the torches sputter in the damp. You can imagine him doing this for weeks on end, the way some people water houseplants with the same tender persistence. The sea here is not a flat sheet. It breathes in long, slow undulations, like a sleeping animal. You feel the rhythm pass under you, rise and fall, never hurrying, never stopping. The raft does not cut through the water so much as it leans into it, yielding to each movement. Somewhere to the south, beyond the horizon, lies a string of ancient harbors, some thriving still, some swallowed by the sea. One of them, historians believe, may have been the last place these sailors touched land before venturing into the unbroken blue. Historians still debate whether they aimed for Madagascar deliberately or simply followed the currents until the island found them. Your eyes wander upward. The sky is peeling back from gold to deep indigo, with the first bright pin of a planet showing itself just above the mast. The torches, once bright against the daylight, now seem to huddle into smaller, warmer pools of light. In another hour, they will be only one of many points of fire in a field of darkness. You hear the creak of vine lashings settling under your weight, a reminder that every part of this vessel was crafted by hand in a world without nails or screws. The vines were boiled in water to make them supple, then wrapped wet so they would shrink and tighten as they dried, binding the raft like a woven spell. A warm draft comes across the deck, carrying the mingled scents of salt water and sun-baked wood. It is gentle, but it shifts the sail just enough to nudge the bow further from the land. The wake behind you is faint, a mere wrinkle on the sea's skin. You realize that this journey will have no rushing moments, No sudden leaps forward, only the slow accrual of distance. Out here, speed is not measured in knots, but in how far the stars drift between your waking and sleeping. The older man at the stern gestures toward the horizon. You follow his gaze and see a faint smear of cloud far ahead, tinged with the last of the sun's warmth. It is nothing special, yet you find yourself staring at it as if it were a landmark. In a way, it is the first marker on a voyage where maps are written not in ink, but in remembered skies and passed down tailies. It reminds you of a strange fact you once heard. Certain seabirds can detect the scent of land from over 50 miles away. You think about how amazing that would be at a buffet. The raft rocks gently, and you feel the vibration of water slapping against the logs. Each splash is distinct, yet part of a greater pattern, like notes in an unending lullaby. The torches crackle, throwing a stray ember into the dark. It dances briefly before vanishing into the ocean's vast mouth. Somewhere, deep below, unseen currents are already deciding where you will be carried next. The night is almost fully here now, and the raft has become its own small world, adrift in an endless, softly breathing plain. You take a slow breath, tasting salt, smoke, and something older, the scent of 1,000 voyages layered in the air. It feels like stepping into a story that has been told for centuries, and in a way, you are. The night has settled in completely now, and the raft floats as though suspended between two vast mirrors, the black glass of the sea below and the dark silk of the sky above. The torches burn lower, their flames swaying with a rhythm that seems to match your own breathing. From somewhere far ahead, a faint sound reaches you, not the splash of a wave against the logs, but something softer, more continuous, like the rustling of fabric in a slow wind. It is the ocean speaking to itself, a whisper that has traveled miles before touching your ears. You step forward on the raft, the vines creaking softly under your weight. The warmth of the day lingers in the wood, and when your hand brushes against the mast, it feels like leaning into the side of a sleeping friend. The sail catches a faint night breeze, just enough to pull the raft forward at a pace too slow to see, but fast enough that you can feel the slightest shift in the water's song. Far to the east, just above the horizon, the moon is climbing, full and pale, scattering a silver path across the sea. You watch as the light trickles over the logs, making the wet edges glisten. This same moon once guided sailors from the ancient port of Sofala in what is now Mozambique, a place that centuries later would be bustling with gold traders and spice merchants. But back in the age of your voyage, it was no more than a sandy inlet, visited only by fishermen and the occasional daring mariner who had ventured across the vast water from distant islands. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the gentle pitch of the raft carry you deeper into that thought. In the darkness behind your lids, you picture small fires burning along a shore, the silhouettes of strangers moving slowly in the glow. You imagine the sound of their language, not words you understand, but a cadence that feels familiar in its rhythm. Somewhere in that imagined harbor, a basket of dried fish waits, strung together with woven palm strips, the scent mingling with the salt air. When you open your eyes again, the raft has turned slightly, following the invisible hand of the current. A soft splash draws your attention, a fish leaping nearby, its body catching the moonlight for an instant before slipping back into the water. You think of an unusual fact you once read. In certain places, the glow of the moon on the water can attract fish to the surface, almost as if they are drawn toward the sky. Out here, that seems perfectly reasonable, because the boundary between sea and sky feels thin enough to swim through. The older man at the stern is still tending the ember jar. From time to time, he leans forward, blowing gently until a faint red pulse glows through the clay. The light never flares, never rushes, just glows and subsides, as if the ember itself is breathing along with the raft. You find yourself matching its rhythm without realizing it. You move to the edge of the raft and peer down into the water. The moonlight penetrates just enough to reveal drifting shapes below. A ribbon of seaweed, a scattering of plankton, the faint shimmer of something moving deeper still. It's easy to imagine the ocean as a vast library of moments, each current carrying a story from one shore to another. The Austronesian voyagers, whose path you follow, understood this in their own way. They read the swells, the flight of birds, and the taste of the wind, finding direction where others would see only chaos. Historians still debate whether these sailors learned such skills from generations before them or discovered them anew each time they ventured farther. The breeze shifts again, cooler now, carrying with it a scent that is neither purely sea nor entirely land. It could be the faint trace of a distant island's vegetation, or simply the smell of rain forming somewhere over the horizon. You tilt your head, listening for thunder, but there is none. Only the ongoing whisper of the water, as constant as your own heartbeat. You notice how the stars overhead have sharpened since the moon rose higher. Entire constellations wheel slowly across the sky, their arcs so vast they feel motionless. One cluster, shaped almost like a canoe, reminds you of the way Polynesian navigators charted their routes, not on parchment, but in memory, mapping the heavens to the shifting lines of the ocean below. A single star, low in the west, seems to hover just above the water, and for a moment you could believe it is a lamp lit by another traveler. The torches are nearly out now, their smoke drifting lazily into the dark. You can smell the faint bitterness of the last embers as they fade, but the moon's silver light has grown strong enough to replace them. The surface of the water gleams like a field of hammered metal, each ripple catching the light for a breath before passing it on. The sound of the sea's whisper deepens, as if the ocean itself is leaning closer to share something it does not want the wind to hear. Far ahead, a pale shape wavers on the horizon, so faint it might be nothing at all. Perhaps a low cloud, the crest of a distant swell, or the quiet hint of land. You keep silent, and the older man beside you does not raise his eyes. The raft glides on, steady and unhurried, as if the hours have thinned and loosened, letting the moment drift free from the weight of time's usual pull. The night stretches on without haste, rich with quiet life. Every detail seems to linger, the faint creak of vines underfoot, the cool sigh of air drifting over the water, the brief silver flash along a fish's back. You sense that if you closed your eyes here, sleep would carry you gently forward, the rhythm of the raft unchanged. The ocean's soft whisper beneath you feels like a lullaby without end, as if the sea itself had taken it upon her ancient self to cradle your dreams until morning light returned. The raft glides as though it has no weight, moving on a tide so steady that you can hardly tell you are traveling at all. The moon hangs higher now, luminous and round, painting the surface of the sea in silver that shifts with every rise and fall of the water. The last of the earlier torches had burned low, their smoke curling like ribbons into the night, but now new ones are being lit. The older man at the stern kneels beside the clay ember jar, tilting its lid just enough for a pulse of red to flare. With practiced care, he feeds a twist of dried palm fiber into the ember's breath. A faint thread of smoke curls upward, then glooms into a tiny flame. You watch the light take hold of the fresh torches, first a dim glow, then a bloom of golden warmth, their flames bending gently in the sea breeze. Against the pale glow of the moon, the torchlight feels almost alive, flickering as if it knows its own importance. The shadows it casts on the raft are long and wavering, tracing the rough lines of the lashed logs and the knots of the vines that hold them. Each vine looks worn, yet strong, the fibers darkened by salt spray and time. The smell of the torches is different from the open fire of a hearth. There is a resinous sweetness from the sap of the branches, mixed with the faint char of fiber wrapping. It is a scent that clings to your hair, to your clothes, to your hands if you pass too near. Out here, It is not just a light, but a companion. Its warmth drives away the cool damp that sometimes creeps up from the water. Your eyes lift to the horizon, where the moonlight spills into the sea. You recall that ancient sailors once believed the moon's silver path could be followed like a road, leading the traveler home. In truth, they relied on many guides: the stars, the shape of the swells, the flight of seabirds, but the moon, too, had its place. In the 1st century, Roman accounts spoke of travelers who crossed vast waters from Arabia to the coast of East Africa, following the glow of the moonlit ocean. Whether those records were literal or more poetic is still debated among historians, but the image of that silver path remains. A sudden hiss of wind brushes the torches, making their flames lean low before straightening again. The sound is small, almost swallowed by the sea, but you feel it in your bones. A shift in the air, a reminder that the ocean is never fully still. The older man lifts his head slightly, scanning the dark ahead. He says nothing, but his hand rests on the torch's base, ready should the wind grow bolder. You think of a curious fact you once read. Certain kinds of fire will burn more brightly when a breeze is constant, as if they draw strength from the very thing that threatens to extinguish them. The flames on your raft seem to prove this true, flaring gently whenever the night wind sighs across their tops. Around you, the sea stretches into a soft, dark infinity. Every so often, a patch of light flares beneath the surface, bioluminescent plankton stirred by the raft's passage. The effect is like scattering a handful of stars into the deep, each one flashing for a heartbeat before winking away. You imagine ancient mariners seeing the same phenomenon long before they had words for it, perhaps believing that the sea itself was alive with tiny spirits, dancing in welcome or warning. The torches give the raft a fragile sense of boundary, a circle of warm light in the vast cool night. Within it, the creak of wood and the soft shuffle of bare feet sound more intimate, almost domestic. You notice the way the torchlight glows against the wet sheen of the logs, tracing each groove where a blade once stripped away bark. You follow those grooves in your mind, imagining the forest where they were cut, the call of birds overhead, the patient work of hands shaping each log for the journey. Somewhere overhead, a seabird cries once, sharp and brief. It is strange to hear such a sound so far from land, but it reminds you that life moves with you, unseen yet present. The older man glances up at the sound but quickly returns to tending the torch, as if the call was expected. Perhaps it was, a marker in the night as familiar to him as the stars. You think of how such voyages must have looked from the shore thousands of years ago. A few pinpricks of light moving slowly out to sea, the glow of torches shifting in the darkness, the faint sound of water slapping against wood. For those left behind, it must have been both beautiful and unsettling, the promise of discovery mixed with the knowledge that the travelers might never return. The sea has grown smoother now, the swells longer and gentler. The torches stand more upright, their flames steady, and you can hear the low hum of the ocean beneath the raft. It is not a song exactly, but it has the same effect. You feel your thoughts slowing, your senses softening, as though the water itself is coaxing you into its rhythm. In the quiet, you remember another piece of history, the Periplos of the Erythraean Sea. A Greek text from around the 1st century described ports and islands along these waters, places where sailors traded ivory tortoiseshell and spices. It spoke of lands that seemed both real and imagined, their names strange to modern ears. Some scholars think parts of it were based on actual voyages by early Indian Ocean traders, while others believe some descriptions were the work of merchants piecing together second-hand tailies. You wonder what the author would have thought of a raft like yours, lit by resin torches under a moonlit sky. The night deepens further, but the torches hold their quiet vigil. The older man finally sits, his work done for now, and the raft drifts in a calm so complete that you can almost believe the ocean has stilled entirely. The moon's light merges with the warm glow of the flames, and the boundary between sea and sky seems to blur. The world has narrowed to this small circle of light, and for a moment, that is all you need. The first light of day comes soft and pale, like a silk cloth drifting down from some invisible hand. You notice how the water's surface changes with the dawn, the stillness of night slowly replaced by the restless pulse of the sea. The horizon wears a haze the color of warm ash, and you feel the air carrying a different scent, one that speaks of far-off places and shifting seasons. The sound of the water deepens. Each wave now carries a low, rounded hum, as if the ocean has found a deeper voice overnight. You sense a slow but steady push beneath the raft, and you recall the old warnings about the southwest monsoon, the great seasonal breath that has moved ships and rafts for more centuries than anyone can truly count. A fine mist rises, catching the growing sunlight in threads of silver. It rests on your skin and hair like the faintest rain. Somewhere to the east, the sky is rippled with thin, high clouds, moving faster than you expect. This is the herald of the wind to come. Mariners from long before your time spoke of these signs in quiet tones, their words almost reverent. They believed that the monsoon was not just weather, but a living current of the world itself. The raft responds to the change almost shyly at first, swaying with each broad swell. The lashed logs creak in low, familiar voices, and the vines holding them together shift with a soft, fibrous sigh. You look down and see the water curling around them, green at the edges, darkening toward the center. In the distance, the pale shapes of seabirds circle and tilt, their flight lines bending with the growing wind. Your mind wanders, as it often does on long waters, to the stories of Muziris, the ancient Indian port once said to be richer than any other in its time. It is strange to think of such a place, thrumming with spice markets, ivory stalls, and pottery from lands you have never seen, while here you sit on a quiet raft, listening to ropes shift against wood. Muziris was where many great journeys began, some with ships far grander than your humble craft, and yet the same ocean and the same winds carried them all. The swell grows, though it keeps its grace. The sea rolls beneath you like a slow animal stretching in its sleep, lifting and setting you down with unhurried precision. You remember that sailors once timed their departures to the heartbeat of these winds, understanding that if they left too soon or too late, the sea would make them wait in its own way. A curious fact comes to mind. Some scholars believe Muziris may have vanished not by war or neglect, but because the river that fed it changed its course after a flood. The harbor silted up, and the ships that once came by the dozens found new homes elsewhere. Others insist the port still lies buried under layers of time, waiting to be uncovered. The historians still argue over its true fate, each certain that their vision is the most accurate, like friends quietly debating who last stirred the tea. The wind begins to find its rhythm now. You can hear it folding into the sound of the waves, the two voices blending until you cannot tell one from the other. It is neither fierce nor gentle yet, simply constant, the kind of weather that makes you check the ropes without thinking. Your fingers trace the knots, feeling the fibers warm under your touch. You see the torches from the night before have burned down to small pools of hardened resin. The smoke from them lingers in memory only, replaced now by the scent of salt and something faintly metallic carried in from far horizons. The sky is lighter, but not bright. It is the kind of day that stretches itself, unhurried, across the hours. Somewhere below the raft, unseen currents thread their way through deep channels. They are the true travelers here, moving across the ocean floor as they have for ages, carrying seeds, warmth, and stories in their silent flow. You imagine them like the invisible trade routes that once tied Muziris to Arabia, Africa, and beyond, routes that existed long before they were drawn on any map. The creak of the raft is joined now by the gentle slap of spray against your ankles. The monsoon's breath gathers strength, but not yet enough to trouble you. The older sailors said that the first day of the wind was a day for listening, because if you listened closely, you could hear where it wanted you to go. You smile at the thought, knowing that it is more poetry than navigation, though sometimes poetry feels truer than fact. Above, the clouds draw longer strokes across the sky, thin and deliberate. Their slow procession matches the steady pull of the current, and you let your eyes follow both until they seem to blend. You think of the ships that once left Maziris, sails full, decks stacked with peppercorns, pearls, and silk. Perhaps they, too, had mornings like this, the slow awakening of the sea, the faint edge of change in the air, the patient swells lifting them towards something unseen. By midday, the color of the water shifts to a deeper, more confident blue. The wind brushes against your face with a cooler touch now, carrying the dry taste of distance. The sun appears only briefly through a break in the cloud, a pale coin that glints on the horizon before vanishing again. You adjust your position on the raft, feeling the gentle give of the logs beneath you, and take a slow breath. Somewhere far behind you lies the shore you left, and somewhere far ahead lies a shore you have not yet imagined. Between them stretches this broad, breathing expanse, and the first whisper of challenge it offers. You understand that the journey has begun to speak in its own language, and your task is only to listen, to let it unfold at the pace it chooses. And so, with the wind at your back, and the memory of Maziris drifting like a faint song through your thoughts, you continue westward. The ocean hums its patient note, and you, balanced between sky and water, drift with it into whatever the next horizon will reveal. The day has folded itself into evening without a sound, as if the light simply decided to rest. You watch the last amber edge of the sky dissolve into the gray-blue body of the sea, until horizon and water become a single tone. The air feels softer now, as though it has been brushed with the feather of some unseen bird. The wind that had pressed at your back all day now circles you gently, shifting with no clear direction. The raft rocks in an almost imperceptible rhythm, like the breathing of a sleeper. The creaking of the logs has become a familiar song, low notes, steady, endlessly repeating. You glance toward the east, where the first pale star emerges, and the sea beneath it catches the faint light. The water in darkness feels different from the water in day, less a surface to cross, more a vast presence that holds you, letting you drift on its slow pulse. You know that without the sun, direction is a quieter business. Ancient mariners learned to trust the stars, finding in them the certainty that the sea itself rarely offered. Tonight, one star in particular will matter, Canopus, the great beacon of the southern sky, said to have guided ships across the Indian Ocean long before compasses sang their magnetic song. The darkness settles with a depth that seems to swallow distance. The raft's outline is barely visible when you glance down, and the water now carries an ink-like sheen. Somewhere in the black, unseen fish pass beneath you, leaving no ripple. The torch you light burns low, more for comfort than illumination. Its flame bends with each breath of wind, sketching faint copper tones onto the wet edges of rope and wood. Your mind wanders to what sailors once believed about Canopus, that it was not merely a star, but a watchful guardian of those who dared to sail beyond the sight of land. In certain tales, it was said to be the lantern of a celestial navigator, hung low in the sky to show the way westward. Others imagined it as the eye of an ancient sea god, opening each night to guide those patient enough to wait for it. The raft drifts in a direction you cannot measure. The waves are small but unpredictable now, their patterns shifting with the playful indecision of a child tracing shapes in sand. Somewhere, the monsoon wind has paused, leaving you in a pocket of stillness that is both gentle and disquieting. It is not a danger, but it reminds you how small motion can feel when the world is this wide. From time to time, the clouds pull across the sky, obscuring the stars. These moments are like the closing of curtains in a quiet room, leaving you alone with only the sound of water against wood. The torchlight feels warmer then, as though it must take on the work of the stars until they return. You lean back and listen, letting the sea speak in its low, rounded voice. A historian once noted that Canopus appears so bright over the southern oceans that it can cast a faint shadow on a still night. You think of that as the clouds shift and the star emerges, luminous, steady, impossibly far. Its light touches the waves in a narrow path, like a trail of silver dust scattered for you alone. The thought is enough to still any restless wondering about direction, for now the night has given you a guide. The air cools further as the hours pass, and you draw the woven mat closer around your shoulders. The smell of salt is sharper now, mixed with a hint of resin from the torch. Each breath feels heavier in the coolness, as if it carries the weight of the sky itself. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you imagine the coastline of Muziris far behind, its markets dim and silent under the same night that watches over you now. The water carries soft patterns of light, not from the stars this time, but from tiny creatures that wake in the dark. Bioluminescence gathers in small flashes at the edges of the raft, blooming when disturbed by the slow churn of the logs. It is as though the ocean keeps a hidden fire, releasing it only for those willing to watch quietly. You let your hand trail in the water and see a faint green glow spill around your fingers, fading almost instantly. Time becomes hard to measure out here. Without the sun to mark hours, you rely on the changing positions of the stars and the soft, unhurried passing of thought. You remember reading that Canopus has been used by navigators from Egypt to Polynesia, its presence a thread connecting countless journeys. The historians still debate whether ancient mariners reached Madagascar by accident or careful design. But under this sky, the question feels like a small one. The ocean does not care why you cross it, only that you do so with patience. Eventually, the wind stirs again, a faint exploratory movement that brushes the side of your face. The raft shifts, adjusting to the change, and the rope creaks softly in reply. You feel the slow return of motion, not urgent, but enough to let you know the stillness will not last forever. The stars seem closer now, or perhaps you are simply more aware of them. Canopus holds its place with an unblinking calm, as if it has been watching you all along. You imagine it has seen countless nights like this, countless rafts and ships and faces turned upward in hope. Its light feels ancient in a way nothing else can match, older than ports, older than stories, older even than the first thought of crossing this ocean. You fall into the night's slow rhythm, your breath sensing with the gentle sway of the raft. The air hums softly in your ears. The sea answers with quiet splashes, and torchlight flickers in a steady lull. Ahead, unseen, waits the next chapter of the voyage, but its mystery soothes rather than stirs. Wrapped in this drifting, with stars above and depths below, you rest in a stillness that belongs only to the night. Canopus gleams on the horizon like a patient promise, and you close your eyes knowing it will remain when morning comes. The first sign is not the rain itself, but the deepening scent of the sea, a fragrance heavier than before, almost sweet in its fullness, as if the water has drawn something from the far horizon and carried it to you. The air presses gently against your skin, warmer, thicker, carrying with it the subtle taste of distant lands. Somewhere in the east, unseen, the sky has gathered its clouds and begun its quiet march toward you. The light shifts before the rain comes. Morning takes on a muted silver tone, the kind that makes even the brightest water look subdued, as though the world is viewed through a veil of fine silk. The waves stretch long and slow, their crests soft, but their weight unmistakable. You hear them more than you see them. A low rolling sound, the language of water preparing for change. When the first drops fall, they do not startle. They are cool, round beads that land on the skin and disappear instantly, absorbed into the rhythm of the sea. You watch them pockmark the surface of the water, tiny circles colliding and vanishing in the swell. Soon, Their number grows, and the air is filled with the gentle hiss of rain meeting ocean. The eastern sky has drawn close now, its clouds deep and layered, shifting in quiet majesty. You know that somewhere far in that direction lies Socotra, the island where the winds and rains meet in an ancient pact. Mariners have spoken of it for centuries, a place where the monsoons pause to breathe, where strange trees rise like living sculptures, and where the earth itself bleeds red from the sap of the dragon's blood tree. Historians still wonder how such an island became a landmark for ancient navigators, but sailors never questioned it. Socotra was less a point on a map and more a presence, a reminder that land could still emerge from the ocean's endless reach. Some believed the island's mountains could call the rain, others that the dragon's blood resin held the power to protect a ship from storms. The rain intensifies, no longer falling in drops, but in fine threads that blur the line between sea and sky. It wraps you in a soft curtain, muting the creak of the raft and the distant calls of seabirds. The logs darken under the wet, their grain rich and gleaming, the knots holding fast against the swell. Water collects briefly between the bindings before spilling back into the ocean in delicate streams. Each breath feels cooler now, and you pull your woven covering closer. The smell of wet wood mingles with the sharper tang of salt, and somewhere beneath it all is the faint, resinous scent of the torches, now extinguished against the damp air. You feel the rain soaking into your hair, your shoulders, your hands, until you are simply another part of the ocean's surface. Your thoughts wander again to Socotra. Perhaps at this moment, its dragon's blood trees stand in the same rain, their umbrella-like canopies catching the water and dripping it slowly to the roots. You imagine the island's cliffs darkened by the weather, the waves at its shore lifting in rhythm with the ones that now cradle your raft. The island has seen countless voyages pass, some reaching its shores, some never returning from the seas beyond. The monsoon's breath is steady now, pushing from the east with the quiet persistence of something that has traveled a long way to be here. The waves rise higher, not in anger but in steady insistence, urging the raft onward. You adjust the bindings at the mast, checking the knots as water streams over your hands. The fibers are slick, but they hold. The rain has a way of slowing time. Each drop feels both immediate and eternal, its fall part of a pattern older than any journey. You think of how ancient sailors must have read these rains, their senses tuned to the changes in air and water, their minds storing each subtle sign for future crossings. For them, rain was never just weather. It was instruction, a message carried from far-off shores. Somewhere in the shifting mist, you almost imagine a darker shape, far at the edge of vision, perhaps just a cloud formation, perhaps the faint echo of an island that waits beyond the rain. It lingers only for a moment before the curtain of water hides it again. The sea has a way of showing things and taking them back before you can be sure. You let your gaze fall to the surface beside the raft, watching the rains dance. The impact of each drop raises a tiny crown before folding back into the swell, as if the ocean is endlessly bowing to the sky. The sound is constant, a silken static that fills the air and soothes the spaces where thought might otherwise wander. Evening approaches unnoticed. The light remains pale and even, as if the sun has stayed behind the clouds all day. You feel no hurry to see it. The rain itself has become the day's companion, its touch and sound enough to mark the passing hours. In this weather, there is no clear horizon, only the gentle blending of all distances into one quiet expanse. As darkness begins to seep into the edges of the sky, the rain eases, softening until it is only a fine mist. The wind shifts slightly, hinting at a calmer stretch ahead. You breathe in the damp air deeply, as though to take some part of this moment with you into the next. Somewhere Socotra remains unseen, its trees holding their rainwater, its cliffs drying slowly in the fading light. You close your eyes, letting the raft's slow rise and fall cradle you. The ocean speaks in the fading hush of retreating rain, in the gentle clap of water against the lashed logs, in the quiet sigh of wind weaving its way around your body. The daylight has slipped entirely within this soft curtain of weather, leaving no sharp edges, no rush. You feel its lingering calm seep into you, carried effortlessly into the night, as if the sea itself has chosen to hold you in its steady, unbroken rhythm. The sea changes its tone long before the rift in the journey appears. At first, the water seems calmer, almost inviting, with a clarity that allows you to glimpse the shifting blue-green beneath. Sunlight scatters into the depths, where pale shapes drift lazily, small fish, pieces of coral, fragments of shells moved by the tide. Yet beneath this beauty lies a subtle unease, a quiet that feels too deliberate, as though the ocean itself has paused to watch. The logs of the raft creak softly as they adjust to the gentle rise and fall. You can hear the faint tapping of loose knots shifting under their bindings. The wind has thinned, carrying a mild, salty scent, and the sails hang a little heavier in the still air. It is the sort of weather that makes one think of rest, yet the mariners of old knew that such stillness could hide something else entirely. Somewhere below, the Chagos coral atolls stretch, unseen rings of limestone and living reef scattered like ancient necklaces across the Indian Ocean. The people who sailed before you spoke of them in hushed tones, not because they were unknown, but because they were avoided. Sharp-edged coral hides just beneath the waterline, waiting for the unwary. The waves here do not crash in warning. They fold and curl deceptively, masking the jagged labyrinth beneath. It happens quietly. A single voice breaks the rhythm of the day, a call sharp enough to pull every head toward the starboard side. One of the crew is missing from his post. At first, it is thought that he has shifted to another part of the raft, perhaps to tend to the bindings or adjust the sail. But as minutes pass, the realization blooms like a slow tide. He is nowhere to be seen. The sea offers no clue. No splash was heard, no struggle seen. Only the same swaying surface, patterned by light and shadow, as if the moment has been folded neatly into the water's keeping. You scan the horizon, the empty expanse where sky and ocean blend, knowing the search will bring no shape, no outstretched hand breaking the surface. The crew moves with quiet precision, peering over the edges, scanning every shift in the current. The raft itself feels different now, heavier, more deliberate in its movements, as though it has joined in the search. The loss is not met with shouts or frantic gestures. It is absorbed in silence, the way the sea absorbs all sound, leaving only the memory. You recall the old tales of Chagos, how the reefs are said to hold the spirits of those who came too close, how their colors in the sunlight are as bright as any jewel hiding their edges in beauty. Some believe the atolls are alive, that the coral itself senses the presence of ships and draws them nearer, offering safe anchorage in appearance, but death in truth. Beneath you, the water turns a shade of blue so deep it seems almost unreal, as if the ocean had borrowed the color from some ancient dream. Through its crystal surface, you think you might reach down and graze the reef below, but you know it is only an illusion. The depth is far greater than it appears. Down there, the coral lies in sprawling mazes, sharper than any chiseled stone, its jagged arms ready to tear into the hull of any vessel foolish enough to drift too close. Somewhere in that unfathomable labyrinth rests the missing sailor, whether swept away by an unseen current or caught against the cruel edge of rock. Only the sea holds the answer. The air has cooled, carrying with it a faint ghostly rustle that drifts across the water's skin, as though the wind were passing through invisible leaves. Overhead, a thin cloud drifts lazily across the sky, casting a brief shadow that deepens the blues and greens below. The raft, obedient to forces it cannot see, drifts slightly to one side, nudged by hidden currents. For a fleeting moment, you imagine these waters pulling you toward something unseen. A quiet gravity, tugging from just beyond the edge of sight. Evening does not fall abruptly. It gathers in slow, deliberate strokes. The horizon first glows gold, the light spreading like embers along the rim of the world, then surrenders to a pale, almost wistful lavender. The crew moves with fewer words and slower steps. Their work is the same, adjusting a rope here, shifting a sail there. But each motion feels heavier now, weighted by the loss. No one mentions the missing man, yet his absence hangs in the air. It is there in the way knots are pulled tight and checked twice before being left alone. In the way, eyes linger on the water, a moment too long before returning to their tasks. The Chagos remain somewhere close, hidden in the thickening night, yet vivid in the mind. You picture them as pale rings under the moonlight, circles of sand and coral rising from the depths, their surfaces washed endlessly by silver waves. The old legends say the reefs glow faintly at night, as if lit from within by the lives they have taken, a ghostly light that only the patient or the lost will ever see. When the stars appear, they scatter themselves across the sky with a kind of quiet generosity. Their light has traveled for ages, crossing a vastness beyond imagining, only to find the damp deck of this small raft. You lean back against the wood, the vines creaking gently beside your ear. The rhythm is steady, a slow rocking that feels almost like breathing. Salt and wet rope mix in the air, filling your lungs with the scent of the voyage. Somewhere below, beneath this deceptive calm, the coral labyrinth waits, still and indifferent, holding the silence of countless stories cut short. The night passes without storm or change, but its weight remains. By morning, the crew will set the sails again, guiding the raft onward. The horizon will open wide, the winds will rise, and the ocean will continue its endless folding and unfolding. Yet here, in this hushed stretch above the Chagos reefs, you feel them, all those claimed by the deep, their presence woven into the slow, unbroken dance of the waves. The ocean has a way of bending time, stretching each day until it feels longer than the one before. The sun makes its slow, deliberate climb, laying soft gold over the ripples, but the hours seem to blur together, drifting without shape or edge. In these drawn-out days, the food begins to run thin. The dried fish, once neatly stacked in palm-woven baskets, is now reduced to only a few curled, brittle pieces. The jars of grain, sealed tight with wax and wrapped in fiber, grow lighter each time they're lifted. Every portion is measured with deliberate care, the hands that divide it moving slower than they once did. Meals grow quieter. The crew gathers in small knots along the raft's edge, their balls holding less than before. Some break what little they have into smaller fragments, not as a trick for the stomach, but to let the act of eating last longer. The salt-heavy air stirs hunger, and the body begins to dwell on thoughts of plenty. In these moments, the mind drifts further than the raft itself, traveling to a place no horizon yet reveals. Madagascar. Even the name feels warm in the mouth, a sound full of promise. It is spoken softly among the crew, as though saying it too loudly might scatter it into the wind. The stories pass between them in low tones, half for comfort, half to keep the vision alive. They speak of an island unlike any other, a place where trees tower higher than the tallest mast they're broad, branches bending under the weight of fruit so large and sweet that a single one could feed a family for days. Rivers wander gently toward the sea, their waters cool and clear, tumbling over smooth stones that glisten in the sun. Along the banks, flowers bloom in wild abundance, releasing scents that drift from miles on the wind. As these visions are shared in hushed voices, the ache of hunger softens, replaced by a fragile warmth. For a brief moment, the long and weary voyage feels as if it is already drawing near to its long-awaited reward. Some tailies mention creatures found nowhere else, giant lemurs that leap between branches, their calls echoing through the dusk. Birds with wings so broad they cast moving shadows over the forest floor. and reptiles whose scales catch the sun like polished stone. These stories, passed down from sailors who swore they saw its shores, are tinged with mystery. For every voice that claims the island is real, another whispers that it is only a mirage, appearing to those who need hope most. The crew has never been there. Few they know have ever claimed to set foot upon it. Those who have often speak in incomplete fragments, their words drifting like smoke, a mention of red earth, of forests so dense the light turns green, of fruits that stain the hands deep purple. The ocean guards its roots well, and the island, whether by chance or by choice, remains distant to most. In the heat of midday, when the sails hang low and the air barely stirs, hunger wraps itself around thought. You can almost taste the imagined fruit, sweet, cool, with juice that runs down the wrist. You can picture the shade beneath the towering trees, the sound of leaves rustling in the inland breeze. For a few moments, the ache of the stomach is replaced by the soft ache of longing. The raft drifts with unhurried grace, steered more by the hidden push and pull of the currents than by any breath of wind. Above, a lone bird crosses the sky, its shape unfamiliar to the crew. For a moment, it feels as if it carries news from some distant shore, an unspoken message that land is near. Every gaze follows its flight until it fades into the pale horizon, where the sea and sky dissolve into one seamless haze. Beneath you, the logs are warm from the long day's sun, their rough grain worn smooth by weeks of salt water and spray. Between them, you can hear the faint trickle of seawater slipping through, the ocean breathing softly through the raft as very frame. As night comes, the air cools, brushing against skin in a way that sharpens the hunger once again. Overhead, the moon lays its silver light along the swells, and the sound of the water is constant, a gentle, unbroken hush that seems to wrap itself around the raft like a blanket. The stars emerge in their quiet brilliance, scattered across the black in ancient constellations that have guided generations of sailors. Somewhere among them is the path to Madagascar, though the way forward remains uncertain. As if the island chooses the moment it will allow itself to be found. You think of an old tale, passed between sailors over countless crossings, a story of a vessel that drifted too far west into waters absent from any map. One morning, the crew awoke to see a strange pale mist resting low on the horizon. Through it rose the outline of towering cliffs, so high they seemed to touch the sky. They sailed toward it, eager and certain, but as the mist thickened, the vision faded. When the fog finally lifted, there was nothing but open water, the cliffs gone as if they had never been. The sailors returned with no evidence, only the conviction that they had reached the edge of some hidden place. Tonight, the sea holds that same quiet mystery, vast, patient, unwilling to reveal all it knows. The hunger in your belly mingles with a deeper hunger in your mind, both reaching for the imagined abundance of Madagascar. Soft earth beneath bare feet, the shade of tall trees, the sweetness of ripe fruit in the air. Sleep comes reluctantly, tugged forward by these visions, as the raft sways in its steady rhythm. When morning comes, it will bring another day of thin rations and slow progress. But it will also bring the same thin thread of hope. For as long as the stories endure, so too does the island. And in the wide emptiness of the ocean, that possibility is a nourishment all its own. The ocean has its own way of breathing, a slow, unbroken rhythm that is more than the rise and fall of tides or the swell of waves under a silver moon. It lives in the ceaseless pulse of wind along ancient sea roads, a steady, deliberate force that has moved for days without pause. It brushes cool across your skin, swells the sail with a low, unhurried murmur, and carries with it a weight of time. This is no storm's violence, nor the restless gusts that herald change. It is the patient wind that once bore whole worlds across the water, cinnamon and cloves from the east, gold and ivory from the west, and the voices of countless sailors who bridged the distance between Asia and Africa. beneath the rafts. Bound timbers, unseen rivers slide through the deep, carrying a memory older than kingdoms or maps. Before ink traced the first chart, navigators learned to trust these hidden paths, reading the faint shift of color, the slant of foam, the whisper of current beneath the keel. Different tongues gave them different names, but all knew their steady beat. The same wind that now tugs your clothes once filled the stitched sails of dhows, junks, and outriggers, guiding them unerringly by the same eternal breath. The crew moves in a silence that carries not weariness, but intent. Near the stern, 2 men crouch low, hands sure as they test the knots, where thick rope binds timber, making certain the raft's frame will endure the days still ahead. Along the sail, another pair works methodically, smoothing its edges where palm fibers had begun to fray, sealing them with resin so they can resist the wind's steady hand. Beneath you, the wood is darkened, coarse, and polished by salt, sun, and countless bare steps. Lean close, and you can still catch a trace of the forest it came from, a dry, faintly sweet scent buried deep beneath layers of brine. Every creak in the timbers, every soft tug in the lashings feels like the raft speaking, its language now familiar without conscious thought. Today, the horizon lies blurred, as though brushed over by the air itself. From dawn to noon, its colors shift in patient gradients, a pale wash like thinned milk, then a mellow gold spilling over the wave crests, before fading into the blue-gray that ushers in evening. From the east, clouds arrive in long stretched threads, thinned and scattered by the wind, until they drift like handfuls of fine ash across the sky. They move without pause, each following its own invisible path, bound as you are to the ocean's unbroken breath. Sometimes the sea changes in ways so slight that only a seasoned eye would notice. A ribbon of darker blue sliding under the raft, or a sudden brightness rippling ahead. These are the ocean's invisible frontiers, where one current yields to another. Long ago, sailors read them as clearly as a map, steering by the shift of color, the curve of foam, or the taste of the wind. Some swore they could feel the change in the deck beneath their feet. Knowing this path has been sailed before brings a quiet steadiness. Even as hunger sharpens and the hours stretch thin, you picture ancient traders, holds laden with grain, dyed cloth, or amber, sensing the same subtle pull. They too must have watched the western horizon, uncertain whether the wind would carry them toward familiar shores or the unknown, trusting the sea's hidden pathways to lead them on. The air tastes of distance, salt ever present, yet touched with something cooler, like the ghost of rain from far-off storms. The wind brushes at your clothing, slips cool fingers through your hair, and hums softly in the taut ropes above. Its song is patient, without end, and before long, your breathing matches its rhythm, chest rising and falling with the invisible tide, as though the ocean has drawn you into its vast, unhurried pulse. By late afternoon, the light has mellowed to a warm bronze. The waves lean lazily toward the west, their edges glinting in the sun like beaten copper. The sail pulls without strain, the mast swaying with a gentle creak, and the raft moves as if no longer needing to fight the sea, but traveling with it, carried along by an unspoken agreement. The crew gathers for a brief pause, their faces turned toward the fading horizon. In this light, their expressions are softened, their eyes reflecting the gold of the dying sun. No one speaks. There is nothing to add to the moment. The quiet feels full rather than empty. And if you listen closely, you can almost convince yourself that there are other voices here, carried on the same wind, their words and languages you do not know. They belong to sailors whose bones have long since returned to the deep, but whose journeys ride eternally on these same invisible roads. You wonder what they thought as they stood at the edges of their worlds, staring toward them. Unknown, feeling the same air on their faces, somewhere far to the west, past days and nights you cannot yet count, lies the promise of a new shore. Perhaps it will be Madagascar. Perhaps it will be a scattering of islands not marked on any map you have seen. The wind that now cradles you in its steady arms once bore others to their home harbors, and others still to lands that would change them forever. A mystery lies in not knowing which fate awaits you. Night arrives slowly, not as a curtain drawn, but as colors cooling, shadows deepening. The wind holds, steady, like the calm breath of dreamless sleep. Stars emerge one by one, their cold fires stitching themselves into the sky until the whole dome is lit. Above is the same celestial map that once guided sailors across unseen waters, paired with the hidden currents below to chart the way forward got between. These two maps, water and stars, the journey feels like part of an ancient weaving. The sea does not hurry, and neither do you. The wind's patient hand has carried countless souls before, and now it carries you, breathing in time with the ocean's endless pulse. Morning comes without the usual whisper of rain against the sail or the distant rumble of thunder rolling through the clouds. Instead, the first thing you notice is the quality of the light, a pale golden warmth that spreads slowly, almost shyly, across the raft. It is not the fierce glare of noon or the dim, hesitant glow of dawn in a storm, but something softer, like sunlight remembered from a dream. The sky has opened overnight, releasing its heavy burden of gray and replacing it with a clear, patient blue. Thin strands of cloud drift high above, so delicate they seem painted in a single confident brushstroke, fading at the edges into nothing. The ocean itself has shifted, its restlessness giving way to long deliberate swells, where before waves pressed and tossed the raft with wind-driven energy. The sea now rises and falls with measured grace, as if choosing to pause and breathe. Sunlight scatters across its surface, caught in ripples that break the light into 1,000 tiny sparks, transforming the water into a shimmering sheet of woven silk stretching from horizon to horizon. The crew awakens slowly, drawn not by sound, but by the subtle change in the atmosphere. Silence prevails, a soft, golden stillness replacing the relentless chorus of spray, waves, and groaning masts from past days. The deep, steady breathing of the ocean takes its place, accompanied only by the occasional creak of rope sliding over wood. For a moment, it feels as if the raft has slipped into a different world, one where time itself loosens, letting the day unfold with patient ease. Some wander to the edges, leaning over the lashed timbers to peer into startlingly clear water. Shadows of fish drift far below, their scales catching sunlight in flashes of silver and gold, as though the sea is scattering coins upward. Others tend to minor repairs, unhurried and ritualistic, retying knots, smoothing frayed rope, tightening lashings, checking timber bindings. Each movement is deliberate, synchronized with the gentle sway of the raft and the warmth of sunlight soaking into skin. A quiet dance of care and attention that honors the calm of this newfound morning. Beyond the raft's edge, something new begins to take shape. At first, it is nothing more than a smudge in the morning haze, a faint irregularity along the seam of sea and sky. But as the light strengthens, the shapes grow more distinct. Low hills, pale cliffs, the faint indentation of a bay. The coast of ancient Oman emerges from the distance, its contours softened by the ocean's breath. The name alone carries weight among sailors. Long before this voyage began, it was known as a haven for those crossing the Indian Ocean, a place where traders, fishermen, and explorers could draw their vessels into calm bays, rest their crews, and repair their ships before striking west toward Africa. The old stories speak of its coastline shimmering at night with the glow of countless oil lamps, their light visible far out to sea. Inland caravans from the deserts would meet the ships. There, their camels loaded with sacks of frankincense and myrrh, with woven cloth dyed in colors that caught the sun. It was said the scent of the resins would mingle with the salt air, drifting far enough that even sailors who never set foot ashore could catch it on the wind. In your mind, the shore becomes a market spilling across the sand, shaded by canopies of woven palm fronds. The air is filled with voices calling in a dozen languages, bartering over baskets of figs and dates, over copper vessels polished to a warm glow, over jars of preserved lemons whose scent cuts through the sea breeze. Cinnamon. Bark from distant islands lies in bundles beside baskets of dried fish from local waters. Small fishing hulls rest upside down on the beach, their wood dark and glossy from repeated oiling, drying in the sun before the next journey. Some tales carry a whisper of mystery. Sailors speak of quiet stone ruins hidden along the high cliffs, half swallowed by sand. Doorways narrow enough for only one person to pass stand open to the wind, but no one agrees who built them or why. Were they the work of a forgotten local people, their history carried away by the desert, or the remnants of traders from far off lands who made landfall here centuries ago and left their mark before vanishing back into the sea? Historians still argue the truth tangled somewhere between fact and salt-breathed legend. Perhaps it is that very uncertainty that keeps the stories alive. For now, Oman remains only a distant shape, touched with haze and softened by distance. The raft holds its steady pace, the sail catching a wind that no longer pushes with urgency, but guides with an almost gentle hand. The crew takes turns watching the coastline, tracing its low ridges and sandy inlets with quiet curiosity. The air here carries a distinct warmth, dry and faintly mineral, a sharp contrast to the heavy, moist breath of the open ocean. Somewhere inland, hidden from view, rise ridged mountains and narrow wadis where water gathers only after sudden, torrential rains. But at this meeting of land and sea, the light dances across the waves as if welcoming you, softening the horizon. With a gentle glow by midday, the sky has settled into the golden hue of a calm sea day. Sunlight warms the raft's timbers, making them pleasantly hot beneath your hands. Shadows stretch lazily across the deck, shifting in rhythm with the gentle sway of the sail. Overhead, seabirds drift on the thermals, gliding with ease before, turning toward the distant shore, unhurried as though aware that the land will not vanish. There is no rush to reach Oman. The mere knowledge of its presence is enough a quiet promise at the edge of vision. Beyond it stretches the final leg of the Indian Ocean, leading toward Africa, but that thought can wait. The voyage flows in a rare harmony of light, wind, and water. You breathe deeply, tasting salt on your tongue, feeling warmth sink into your shoulders. The pale line of the coast grows ever so slightly clearer, hinting that land, at last, is within reach. The first sign arrives not as land, but as a shadow crossing the deck, a fleeting, graceful curve that glides over the wood and disappears before you can lift your eyes. When you do, there it is again, the clean, deliberate arc of a seabird, its wings catching the light like ivory in the sun. It circles once, twice, then drifts higher, letting the warm air carry it farther from sight. Seabirds do not stray far from shore. For days, the horizon has been nothing but the deep blue of open water. Yet here they are, gliding with the ease of those who know where land sleeps beneath the sky. Their presence feels like a quiet message. The journey across the longest stretch of water is drawing to a close. More appear as the morning deepens. Some drift in from the east, their wingtips barely skimming the air above the waves. Others rise from somewhere unseen, as though called by some gentle current in the wind. The raft rocks softly under the day's calm, the wood warm beneath your hands as you steady yourself to watch. Some of the crew begin to point toward the western horizon. In the thin veil of morning haze, faint shapes break the line between sea and sky, so small at first that they could be tricks of the light. But as the hours pass, they grow sharper. Gentle slopes, dark with foliage, touched here and there. By the pale gleam of beaches, you are nearing the Comoros, a scattered chain of islands resting in the embrace of the Indian Ocean. Long ago, before your voyage was even imagined, these volcanic peaks rose from the sea and became a resting place for those who traveled between Africa and the distant ports of India and Arabia. The old traders would stop here to take on fresh water, to mend sails, and to trade for spices and coconuts. The Comoros are said to have always been touched by many hands. The earliest stories speak of settlers from the African coast. They're small, boats laden with millet and woven mats. Later came traders from Arabia, their ships heavy with incense and cloth. Even sailors from distant lands across the eastern seas found their way here, bringing with them seeds and stories, both of which took root in the warm soil. One account, preserved only in fragments, tells of an ancient port on one of the islands where stone steps led directly into the ocean. The steps, smoothed by centuries of tide and footfall, are said to have vanished beneath shifting sands, leaving only the faintest outline when the tide is low. Historians still debate whether those terraces are the remains of an ancient local community or the work of early Arab trading caravans. From the deck, the islands seem to float on the horizon, each with its own crown of green forest. The wind carries a subtle change, less of the open ocean salt, more of something warm and earthy, as if the scent of the land is reaching out to greet you. Every so often, a faint cry of seabirds drifts across the water, weaving itself into the slow rhythm of the waves against the hull. The raft moves at its own pace, as though it, too, knows there is no need to hurry. The sail flutters lightly, catching the shifting breezes that flow around the islands. You feel the difference in the sea here. The swells are smaller, the water calmer, as if the ocean itself is gentling its voice for this stretch of the voyage. Some of the crew begin small preparations. Nets are untangled, ready for the chance of fresh fish in these rich waters. Clay jars are checked for leaks, their lids secured with strips of palm fiber. There is quiet conversation about where the raft might anchor, but the words are spoken in the same slow tone as the work, unhurried, touched with the awareness that soon feet will stand on steady ground again. The sun arcs higher, glinting off the surface in scattered points of light. You lean against the smooth curve of the raft's timber, feeling the steady breath of the sea beneath you. The birds are closer now, sometimes skimming the water so near that their wingtips send small ripples outward. They are not in a hurry. Either dot in the mind's eye, the promise of land unfolds slowly, teasing the imagination with its possibilities. Groves of breadfruit and banana trees sway gently in invisible breezes, their leaves rustling as if whispering secrets of the soil. Small villages appear between the trees, their roofs carefully woven from palm fronds, smoke curling upward in thin spirals from cooking fires. Narrow streams carve delicate paths through the terrain, their gentle trickle adding a rhythm to the imagined scene. Perhaps there are market spaces tucked beneath ancient trees, where baskets of cloves, nutmeg, and freshly caught fish are laid out, the vibrant colors of spices and produce reflecting the warmth of the sun. The mingling scents of smoke and salt. Air carry the quiet promise of rest, of safe harbor after endless days on the water dot by late afternoon. The outlines of the Comoros grow sharper, their forested slopes dark and distinct against a sky brushed with gold. Waves break softly against coral reefs, their white lines marking the boundary between untamed sea and the calmer waters beyond. Birds wheel overhead in great arcs, their calls rising and falling like a song carried by the wind, as if heralding the arrival of the raft. A natural pull seems to draw the vessel forward, not urgency, but an invisible current guiding toward land. Light shifts gently across the islands, painting hills in soft gold and shadow as the day leans toward evening. Somewhere within the islands, the first lamps are lit, their glow faint yet significant, signaling the end of another day in these waters. The raft drifts onward, steady and sure, toward the quiet welcome of the Comoros, carrying its weary travelers closer to the comfort and mystery of land after long stretches of open ocean. Each moment is a gentle passage, a melding of anticipation and the patient rhythm of the sea. At first, it is only a faint smudge in the distance, lying low across the horizon, a gentle shadow between the steady blue of the ocean and the pale sweep of the sky. You've grown so used to the endless water that the sight feels almost like a mirage, a dream drifting into view. But as the hours pass, the shape sharpens, revealing the long, undulating edge of a vast shore. The shoreline of Madagascar rises slowly, almost shyly, from the sea. The green of its forests spills down toward narrow bands of pale sand, which in turn give way to the dark shimmer of the water's edge. Above, the hills roll away into a haze that softens their peaks, a kind of haze that speaks of warm earth. Meeting the humid breath of the ocean, the sea changes here. You notice it first in the scent, richer, carrying the mingled aromas of salt and vegetation, as though the land has been steeped in the ocean's own tide for centuries. Then in the water itself, which deepens in color and carries hints of shadow from the reefs beneath. The swell is gentler now, the motion of the raft easing into a slow sway, as if the ocean is guiding you toward rest. Somewhere along this great island's eastern curve lies the Baie d'Antingal, the ancient bay that traders once called the gateway to Madagascar. Sheltered by its wide embrace, ships could anchor in calm waters, safe from the harsher moods of the open sea. It was here that some of the earliest foreign sails were said to appear, long before maps gave names to these shores. The old stories tell of travelers arriving with the monsoon winds, their vessels heavy with spices, cloth, and beads. They would find the bay not only a safe harbor, but also a place of exchange, where words, customs, and seeds passed between hands. Historians still debate whether the first traders to arrive here were Arabs, Southeast Asians, or other seafaring communities who had crossed the Indian Ocean even earlier. From the raft, you try to imagine those early arrivals, slender outriggers gliding into the bay at dawn, the air rich with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, voices calling softly across the water, the slow rhythm of paddles dipping into calm tide. The Baie d'Antingal, with its wide arms, must have felt like a place where the ocean finally exhaled, a point of meeting between two vast worlds. The crew moves with quiet focus now. Bundles are checked and secured, ropes coiled neatly, the sail trimmed to catch the shifting breeze. The journey has been long, each day unspooling like a length of woven fiber, and yet here is the knot at the end, a place where travel becomes arrival. No one hurries. The island is not going anywhere, and the light will last for hours still. The birds are a constant presence overhead, their cries carrying above the low rush of the waves. Some dive suddenly into the water, reappearing with silver flashes in their beaks. Others rest on the raft's beams for a few breaths before lifting away again, as if reminding you that both air and water are roads, each leading somewhere different. As you draw closer, details emerge from the haze, tall palms swaying in the wind, dense tangles of mangrove where the shore meets the tide, and behind them, forests whose leaves seem to shimmer in shifting shades of green. The slope of the hills suggests ancient volcanic origins, their curves softened by centuries of rain and root. The Baie d'Antingal is somewhere beyond the point of land you now see to the south. Even from here, the coastline seems to curve inward, hinting at the shelter of its waters. The bay has been described by sailors as a place where time slows, where the light falls in long golden beams, and the air is so still at dusk that you can hear the smallest ripple of fish breaking the surface. It is said that deep within the bay, there are places where old wooden posts still rise from the shallows, remnants of docks long claimed by tide. And barnacle. No one knows who built them, or how long they stood in service. Some believe they were left by the first traders, others that they belonged to fishing communities whose memory is lost to all but the land. The raft glides forward, and the play of light on the water changes. Patches of turquoise and pale jade appear beneath the hull, marking the presence of coral gardens. In the clear shallows, you catch glimpses of small fish darting in quick flashes, their colors vivid against the sand. The sight brings a quiet sense of abundance, as though the sea itself is offering a welcome. You imagine what it will be like to step ashore after so many days. Afloat, the first firm weight of sand under your feet, the gentle pull of landward breezes, the shade of palm fronds overhead. Perhaps there will be fresh water in the streams that slip down from the hills, cool and clear enough to taste the mineral heart of the island. Late in the afternoon, the shoreline glows with the sun's lowering light. Shadows stretch from the trees toward the water, mingling with the deepening blues of the sea. The crew steers toward the shelter of the southern curve, where the mouth of the bay begins to open. Even from this distance, you can sense the difference. The air calmer, the swell reduced to the faintest rise and fall. The Baie d'Antignon lies just ahead, its waters waiting in quiet patience. This is the place where ocean voyages pause, where stories are set down beside cooking fires, and where the smell of salt mingles with the sweetness of the island's blooms. Soon, the raft will slip into its embrace, and the long journey will become part of the island's own memory. And as you watch the shoreline grow clearer, you realize you are not simply arriving. You are returning to a place that feels, in some gentle, wordless way, as though it has always been waiting for you. The raft drifts into the shallows with a motion so gentle, it feels as though the ocean itself is guiding you toward the shore. The sound of the waves softens here, replaced by the faint hush of water folding over sand. You step down slowly, and, for the first time in many days, the ground is solid beneath your feet. The sensation is strange at first, the firmness of the earth after the constant sway of the sea. You pause for a moment, letting the fine grains of sand shift under your weight, feeling them mold to your steps. The sand here is pale, almost silver under the early morning light, and soft enough to slip between your toes like silk. Each step releases the faintest sigh of warmth, as though the ground itself has been storing the sun's touch for countless seasons. Around you, the shoreline curves in a quiet embrace, fringed by tufts of green where the tide leaves its mark. Just beyond the edge of the beach, a line of towering shapes rises against the sky. At first, you take them for columns of weathered stone, their silhouettes so improbable they seem carved rather than grown. But as you move closer, the truth becomes clear. They are trees, baobabs, colossal and ancient, with trunks swollen, like the walls of some giant earthen cistern. Their bark is smooth and pale, catching the light in muted silver tones. The baobab is unlike any tree you have known on other shores. It grows with an air of permanence, as if it has always been. Here, rooted not only in the soil, but also in the memory of the island itself. These giants are endemic to Madagascar, living for centuries, their hollow trunks sometimes large enough to shelter a small gathering from rain. Historians debate the baobab's role in ancient life. Some see it as a vital water source during harsh dry seasons, while others view it as a symbol of resilience and longevity. Whether practical or emblematic, the baobab shaped how communities engaged with the land and understood their environment. Beneath the baobabs, the air feels cooler, carrying faint hints of dry earth and distant blooms. Their massive trunks stretch skyward, branches spreading wide into delicate crowns of sparse green leaves that rustle softly in the breeze. Around the roots, a rich tapestry of life thrives. Waxy shrubs, glistening succulents, and sun-bright flowers, while the forest floor offers textures of soft moss, brittle twigs, and the occasional crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Moving inland, you find that the vegetation changes subtly with each few paces. Pockets of shade give way to bright clearings where the grass grows high, swaying in the wind like the surface of a quiet inland sea. In these open places, the baobabs stand alone or in small gatherings, their shadows stretching across the grass. Like the arms of ancient guardians, it is easy to imagine that these trees have been watching over the land since before any human set foot here. The silence between them is deep, but not empty. It holds the low hum of insects, the distant call of seabirds, and the faint rush of the wind that threads through the branches. You stop near the base of one particularly vast baobab. Its trunk is wider than the raft you arrived on, the surface marked with faint, swirling patterns not carved but formed naturally, as though the tree's growth has captured the slow movements of time itself. Leaning close, you catch the faint scent of the wood, dry and sweet. Carrying a note of something almost like honey in the shade, you take a moment to sit, letting the coolness settle into your skin after the long days under the open sky. Ground here feels anchored, unmoving, and it steadies something within you. You look up through the branches, where the light filters down in fragments, dappling the earth with shifting patches of brightness. Madagascar's plant life, much like these baobabs, seems to belong entirely to itself. There are species here that exist nowhere else, their forms shaped by the rhythms of this island's seasons and the patience of its soil. You recall the old accounts from traders and travelers, stories of fruits and leaves that heal, of roots that can store water, of flowers that bloom only under certain phases of the moon. Many of these teles blur the line between history and legend, yet standing here, you can believe them all. A little farther inland, a grove of younger baobabs rises beneath the protective shadow of their elders. Their trunks are slimmer, bark lighter, yet they already carry the same quiet dignity. Around them, vines climb and curl, catching the sunlight in soft, green arcs. Running your hand along one, its cool, smooth surface reminds you of the countless small lives threading through this land. Nearby, a faint trickle of water draws your attention. Following it, you find a narrow path where the ground dips slightly and the air feels fresher. A small, shallow stream winds its way through smooth stones, the water tasting clean with a hint of minerals drawn from the island's depths, you imagine. The first arrivals, weary from weeks at sea, discovering this haven. Fresh water, the protective shade of baobabs, and plants to gather for food or medicine. No wonder they stayed, letting their lives root alongside these enduring trees. As afternoon light warms the grove, the baobabs cast long, soft shadows across the sand. The breeze carries mingled scents of salt, leaf, and earth. Above, branches sway slowly, marking time in their own unhurried rhythm. You breathe more deeply, your steps slowing, feeling the land teach its gentle pace. The shoreline is still visible through the trees, the pale arc of sand meeting the deep, calm blue of the bay. The raft rests there, tethered to a rock, gently rocking in the tide. But here, beneath the baobabs, the ocean feels far away, its constant motion replaced by the steady, grounding presence of the earth. And in this stillness, you begin to understand something simple yet profound. Arrival is not just a matter of reaching land. It is the quiet act of letting the land reach you in return. The morning begins with a hush that feels almost like reverence. A soft mist lingers between the trees, curling low to the ground as if reluctant to let go of the night's cool embrace. The air is still, except for the occasional flutter of leaves stirred by some invisible current. Beyond the shelter of the baobabs, the land begins to rise gently, guiding you inland toward the distant silhouettes of mountains. At first, they seem faint, veiled by the morning haze, a long rolling shape across the horizon. But as the mist shifts and the light strengthens, their form becomes more distinct. Peaks and ridges take shape, each shaded in subtle gradients of green and blue, the tallest of them crowned in a thin wisp of cloud. This is Saratanana, the highest mountain range of Madagascar, a spine of ancient stone rising from the heart of the island. For generations, the range has been the subject of whispered tales. Traders who skirted the coasts spoke of its hidden valleys and rare creatures. Elders told of spirits dwelling in the high peaks, watching over the rivers and forests. Some claimed that in the age before words, the first people of this island followed the streams from these mountains to find their homes. The mountains, it is said, remember. The path toward them is unhurried, meandering through patches of sunlit grassland and shaded groves where the earth feels soft beneath your steps. Now and then, the wind carries a faint sound, the murmur of moving water. It is subtle at first, a thread of sound woven into the silence. But with each step, it grows clearer, like a voice drawing you onward. Soon, the trees part to reveal a narrow stream, its surface flashing silver where the light strikes it. The water runs clear, revealing the smooth pebbles and sandy bed beneath. You kneel at the edge, cupping your hands to drink, and the first taste is startling in its purity. Cool and crisp, it carries with it the memory of stone and rain clouds. As though the mountains have poured their essence into each drop, the stream is shallow here, no more than a few fingers deep, but it flows with quiet determination. Following its course, you notice how it threads its way between roots and stones, sometimes spilling into tiny cascades that catch the sunlight in a spray of glimmering drops. Ferns lean toward it, their fronds trembling slightly as if drawn by the freshness of its breath. You pause on a flat rock near one such cascade, letting the water brush over your fingertips. Its touch is a living coolness, a small echo of the high peaks where snow and cloud mingle. Looking upstream, you could almost imagine the path it has taken, down from hidden springs in the folds of Saratanana, over moss-covered stones, and through the layered greens of the forest before reaching this quiet place. Further along, the banks widen into a small clearing. Here, the stream slows enough to form a shallow pool, ringed by smooth boulders that are warm from the sun. The air carries a mingled scent, the sweetness of nearby blossoms, and the faint mineral tang of the water. Dragonflies drift lazily across the surface, their wings catching the light in shifting colors. This pool, you sense, could be a gathering place. In the imagined days of the first arrivals, perhaps they paused here as you do now, washing salt from their skin, filling clay vessels with water, letting the weariness of the sea dissolve into the gentle rhythm of the current. You can almost hear their quiet voices blending with the sound of the water, see their footprints pressed into the damp earth before fading with the sun. Beyond the clearing, the land begins to climb more sharply. The stream narrows again, tumbling over rocks in a series of miniature waterfalls. Each fall leaves a cool mist in the air, tiny droplets that cling to your skin and close like a blessing. The sound here is different, livelier, yet still soft enough not to disturb the peace. Through the trees, you catch glimpses of Saratanana's slopes. They are clothed in a patchwork of forest and grassland, the greens deepening as the altitude rises. Somewhere near the summit lies Maromokotro, the highest peak on the island. Few have set foot there, and fewer still have returned with stories, but those who have speak of vast views where the world feels endless, and of winds that carry scents from forests far below. Local legend tells that in ancient times, before the seas rose and the winds shifted, The people who would one day settle the coasts came first to these mountains. They lived in harmony with the springs and streams, moving with the seasons, taking only what they needed. The mountain spirits, it is said, rewarded this respect by keeping the waters pure and plentiful, even in the driest months. To drink from. Such a stream was to share in that ancient promise. You take another sip now, letting the coolness spread through you. It feels not just refreshing but grounding, as if each drop carries something of the mountain's calm into your own body. The long days of travel, the salt that clung to your lips, the heat of the sun, all of it fades in the presence of this simple, clear water dot. As the day stretches toward noon, the light shifts, brightening the stream's surface into quicksilver ripples. You rest beneath the shade of a leaning tree, the murmur of water wrapping around you like a familiar song. A pair of small birds land nearby, dipping their beaks into the shallows before darting away again. The stream continues its quiet journey, winding away toward the lowlands, carrying with it the story of the mountains in every drop. You watch it go, knowing that somewhere downstream it will merge with other waters, feeding the rivers that nourish the island's forests, fields, and people. For now, you remain here, listening to its voice, breathing in the freshness it offers. The mountains are still distant, but you feel their presence in the air, in the earth, and in the water at your feet. Saratanana is not simply a place on a map. It is a heart that beats quietly at the center of the island, and today it has welcomed you into its rhythm. The day drifts toward its close with a kind of unspoken grace. The last of the sunlight slides across the treetops, turning each leaf into a fleeting ember before fading into shadow. The air cools, carrying with it a sense of damp earth, distant, blossoms, and the faint mineral tang left behind by the fresh stream. Above, the sky is beginning to shift, the pale blue deepening into soft indigo, with the first shy stars peeking through. The group has gathered in a small clearing, not far from the banks of the stream found earlier that day. Here, the ground is level and free of undergrowth, a place where the night can settle without the intrusion of thorns or tangled roots. The baobabs stand like quiet sentinels at the edge, their silhouettes bold against the sky. From the packs carried ashore, a few precious items are brought forth: lengths of vine, smoothed wood, and a pouch containing flints gathered long before the voyage began. But most of what will be used tonight is not brought from the sea. It is found here in the forest's quiet generosity. Fallen branches are collected, their bark peeling away to reveal dry, fibrous wood beneath. Twigs are gathered by the armful, forming small bundles that will take the first spark. Near the center of the clearing, a shallow pit is scraped into the soil, lined with stones taken from the stream. It is here that the first fire on this new land will be lit. One of the elders, his hands steady from years of practice, brings forth two carefully shaped tools, a stone knife and a stone axe, their edges sharp despite their age. These are not crude shards, but tools patiently chipped and smoothed, the result of knowledge passed through countless hands. The knife is used to shave curls of wood, each thin strip falling like pale ribbons to the ground. The axe, heavy yet balanced, cleaves thicker branches into manageable pieces. There is a rhythm to the work: scrape, split, arrange, and it moves at the pace of the fading day. Sparks are coaxed from flint and stone, striking bright against the dimming light until one lands among the tinder. A thin thread of smoke rises, followed by the first flicker of flame. The fire grows slowly, as if reluctant to disturb the calm of the clearing. Twigs catch first, then the smaller branches, until the flames rise just high enough to warm the surrounding air. Its light plays across the faces gathered around it, softening their features into quiet shapes. The sound is gentle, a low crackle, the occasional pop of resin, blending with the evening's chorus of insects and distant bird calls. From where you sit, the firelight reveals the details of the tools more clearly. The knife's edge is notched from long use, but still sharp enough to cut through vine and fiber. The axe head is secured to its handle with a wrapping of cured leather and plant cord, a bond as strong as the day it was made. Such tools, you know, are kin to those unearthed by modern hands in Madagascar, silent witnesses to the lives of those who once shaped them from the island's stone. The evening deepens. The sky above is now thick with stars, their light mingling with the glow of the flames. Shadows dance on the trunks of the surrounding trees, stretching and swaying with the shifting fire. There is no wind, only the steady rhythm of breath, the occasional murmur of movement as someone adds another log to the pit. Meals tonight are simple. Roots roasted in the embers, nuts cracked open with the stone axe, a handful of dried fruits saved from the voyage. The flavors are plain yet satisfying, their warmth lingering long after the last bite. There is no urgency here, no rush to finish. Each mouthful is taken slowly, as if to give the senses time to fully absorb this first night ashore. Beyond the circle of light, the forest seems to lean in, listening. The sounds of the day have faded, replaced by the softer tones of night. Somewhere, a small animal rustles in the undergrowth. Farther off, the faint splash of water suggests a creature moving through the stream. Yet none of it feels threatening. Rather, it feels like the island itself is acknowledging your presence, offering its quiet welcome. The tools lie set aside, their day's work done. The knife rests on a flat stone, the axe leans against a log, both bathed in firelight that gives them a ceremonial air, as if honoring the spirits of the land. Elders speak quietly of how these implements will shape future days, for building, cooking, and crafting life's essentials. Above, constellations drift slowly, the fire sinking into glowing coals that radiate warmth. The air cools, smoke clinging faintly to skin and clothes. The moment feels whole. Sea behind, land beneath, night around, fire at the center. When the final log is laid upon the embers, it is done deliberately, with attention to the moment rather than haste. The flames rise, flickering one last time, casting soft, trembling light across the faces gathered around. Shadows dance gently on the worn timber and the tools that lie nearby, stone axes, sharp blades, and simple implements that have served countless generations before. In that quiet glow, there is a profound sense of arrival. This fire, these tools, this modest meal mark not merely the end of a day, but the opening of a new chapter in a life unfolding. Around the fire, the air hums with the subtle warmth of survival and continuity. The people here, like those who came before, will learn the language of the land, the rhythm of work and rest, the patience of shaping wood and stone, the care required to draw sustenance from forest and stream. Each action, no matter how small, threads into the long story of human persistence. Tonight, however, belongs solely to the present. The crackle of embers, the steady glow of the fire, and the silent witness of stars above cradle the group in a rare calm. Here, under the vast sky, they rest, replenishing both body and spirit, ready to meet the labors of tomorrow with steady hands and enduring hearts. Morning drifts in gently, the light filtering through layers of mist and leaf, turning the air a muted gold. The forest of Ranamafana awakens not with sudden bursts of sound, but with a gradual weaving of life, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of wings, the soft patter of dew falling from high branches. The earth is damp beneath your feet, its scent rich and grounding, a reminder that this place has been alive for countless ages. The group moves slowly, not out of weariness, but out of quiet respect for the place. Here, every step feels as if it should be measured, placed with care upon ground that holds the memory of older footsteps. Narrow paths wend between the towering trunks, their surfaces softened by centuries of fallen leaves. The moss that grows in thick swaths along rocks and roots is cool to the touch, holding droplets of last night's rain like a hidden reservoir. The trees here are immense, their canopies interlacing into a roof that lets in scattered shafts of light. Beneath this green ceiling, the air is warm but never stifling. The forest seems to breathe in its own rhythm. You notice the quiet sway of branches high above, stirred by winds you cannot feel down here. The forest floor is dotted with smaller plants, ferns with fronds curling in gentle spirals, orchids clinging to bark, vines looping lazily from trunk to trunk dot. It is along one of these winding paths that the group encounters an elder from the voyage, now walking with a slow, steady stride. His eyes seem to scan the undergrowth, not for obstacles, but for something hidden in plain sight. At a bend in the trail, he pauses, kneels, and parts the foliage to reveal a cluster of plants unlike any seen before. The leaves are broad and rich, deep green, their veins traced in pale gold. Slender yet strong, the stems bear small clusters of white flowers at their tips, each exuding a faint, sweet fragrance. The elder speaks softly, explaining that these leaves belong to a plant long revered for its healing properties, used by the island's people for countless generations. Crushed into a paste, it can ease fevers. Brewed into a dark, fragrant tea, it relieves aches and pains in the limbs. The knowledge feels sacred, a gift not only of human memory, but of the land itself. With care, the elder harvests only a few leaves, mindful never to take more than the plant can replenish. The cut stems release a sharper aroma, promising relief for those who will use it in the future. The group moves forward, their senses heightened, perceiving the forest as more than a mere passage. A trail has become a thread connecting them to a living repository of wisdom, sustenance, and healing. Each bend reveals new discoveries. A hidden plant, a delicate bloom, a vine with subtle medicinal qualities, all shaped by centuries of growth and attentive observation. The Ranamaphana forest hums around them, leaves rustling, insects buzzing softly, a distant bird calling, a presence both gentle and constant. It holds its secrets patiently, offering its lessons to those who walk with care, reverence, and openness, teaching the language of a forest that nurtures both body and spirit. As the sun climbs, the dappled light filters through the canopy, scattering in intricate patterns across the soft forest floor. At a small stream crossing, they pause to observe the water tumbling over smooth stones. Mosses cling to the banks, droplets shimmering in the golden light, and delicate stems bend toward the flow as if drawn to its life-giving force. The forest seems to guide the stream, shaping its course, while the water in turn nourishes the surrounding plants, reinforcing the intricate web of relationships that sustain this ecosystem. Every glance, every careful step along the banks becomes a lesson in attentiveness. Lunch is taken beneath a great tree whose roots sprawl across the ground in massive, twisting arcs like a colony of sleeping animals. The meal is modest but nourishing, roasted tubers and wild fruits collected. Along the morning's journey, there is no rush, no pretense of urgency, for the forest itself has a pace, a rhythm that encourages slowness. Sitting here, shaded by the broad leaves and inhaling the mingled scents of earth, water, and vegetation, the group is reminded that time is not only measured by hours, but by observation, reflection, and presence. The return journey follows a different route, looping gently through areas both familiar and newly intriguing. A rock shaped like a resting bird, a cluster of vines swaying with a life of their own, and other subtle wonders of the forest capture attention again, offering fresh insight even on a path previously traveled. The trail gradually widens, suggesting the clearing where the camp waits. Leaves gathered earlier are carefully wrapped in broad palm fronds, protected from the sun's warmth, ready to be used in the preparation of remedies and sustenance. As the forest gives way to softer grasses near the camp, a quiet understanding settles over the group. The day in Ranamafana has been more than a simple walk. It has been a lesson in observation, patience, and respect. Each step taken along winding paths, each plant carefully noted, each moment of stillness has deepened their connection to the forest and the knowledge it holds. The land has spoken in whispers, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of water, and the travelers have listened, carrying these insights with them as they move forward. When night descends, the campfire glows steadily, its warmth casting gentle light over the gathered leaves steeping in hot water. The steam rises in slow, curling spirals, earthy and calming, filling the air with the scent of the forest itself. The first sip of tea is a revelation, a tangible link to the forest's life, reminding all that every cure, every comfort, and every nourishment begins with attentive observation and care. In the quiet of firelight and the stillness of night, the forest's lessons, patience, respect, and mindful presence are steeped into both the leaves and the minds of those who walked its paths. This day has revealed that the Ranamafana forest is not simply a place to pass through, but a living guide. Every step, pause, and careful choice is a conversation with the land, offering wisdom, sustenance, and healing to those who approach it with awareness and reverence. The northern coast greets the morning with a lightness that feels almost tangible. The air carries a hint of salt, mingled with the soft, steady hum of the sea beyond the dunes, and every inhalation seems to expand with possibility. The land here unfolds in gentle curves, rolling toward the horizon in pale bands of blue where water meets sky. It is a place that hints at the future, though Hymir, centuries from now, will grow into a bustling port, a nexus for trade and travel across the Indian Ocean. But today, it is still a quiet stretch of earth and water, sun-warmed and waiting, untouched by the noise of commerce, alive only with the natural rhythm of waves and wind. At first light, the group sets to work. Their movements are measured and deliberate, each one following the steady patience of the tides. There is no hurry, no frantic rush. The day itself seems to guide them, unrolling slowly like a tide washing against the shore. From a nearby grove, they gather long, straight poles. The wood is pale and smooth, where the bark has been stripped away, faintly warm beneath the fingers, each piece chosen with care for its strength and balance. Bundles of dried leaves are carried forward from the forest's edge, the surfaces, whispering softly with each step, like a conversation with the trees. These leaves are broad and resilient, their veins strong enough to hold the weight of rain. When layered, they will form walls that shed water as easily as scales on a fish, yet remain light and flexible in the wind. A clearing is selected with equal care. It lies close enough to the sea to taste its shifting moods, yet far enough inland to escape the harshest gusts. The ground is firm, covered with a springy carpet of grass that bends beneath each footfall. Here, the first poles are driven into the earth. Slowly, patiently, the outline of the shelter emerges. A low frame, its curves shaped to mirror the wind, rising with an almost organic grace, as if the structure has grown from the land itself, rather than being built by human hands. Each action, setting a pole, tightening a vine, adjusting the angle, is deliberate, part of a quiet rhythm that harmonizes the work of the people with the pulse of the coast around them. The work continues. With a steady rhythm, each movement careful and deliberate, guided by the natural pulse of the day. Long poles are joined together with lengths of twisted vine, their fibers pliable yet resilient, bending under pressure without breaking. Every knot is tied with precision, simple in appearance but secure enough to hold the frame against wind or rain. There is a quiet satisfaction and the sound of vine fibers sliding against wood, a tactile music of labor that seems to echo the heartbeat of the land itself. Each lash and tie feels like a dialogue between the builders and the materials, an understanding that strength comes not from force alone, but from harmony. Once the frame rises, steady and true, the leaves are brought forward in generous handfuls. They are broad and strong, each one carefully positioned from the bottom up, overlapping like the scales of a great sleeping fish. As more layers are added, the shelter begins to breathe with the life of the forest, a living canopy that sheds. Rain deflects wind, and yet remains light and flexible. The air fills with the deep, almost sweet scent of green, a fragrance that carries both the richness of the earth and the faint promise of protection. By midday, the structure is nearly complete. Its walls are thick enough to shield the interior from prying eyes, yet not so dense as to silence the soft, constant breathing of the sea and wind outside. Inside, the floor is carefully lined with mats woven from reeds, smooth beneath the fingers and gently warmed by the sun. At the rear, a small space is reserved for provisions and tools, baskets of dried fish, bundles of herbs collected from the nearby forest, stone blades, and wooden handles, all arranged with care and ready for use. In this moment, the shelter is more than a structure. It is a promise of comfort, security, and the enduring rhythm of human work in harmony with the land. As the afternoon passes, others begin shaping smaller shelters nearby. There is no rigid order, only a loose scattering of structures around a shared open space. In the center of this clearing, a fire pit is dug, not large, just wide enough to hold a bed of glowing embers for cooking and warmth. Smooth stones are placed in a ring around it, their surfaces already warm from the day. By the time the sun leans toward the horizon, the cluster of shelters feels like the beginnings of a village. The smell of fresh leaves still hangs in the air, mixing now with the faint, resinous scent of wood smoke. From the beach, a few return with baskets heavy with shellfish, gathered from the tidal pools exposed by the retreating water. It is here, in this quiet arrangement of homes in open space, that the story of Vohemar seems to stir. Not yet the great port of gold and ivory that will be known centuries later, but a place already shaped by the idea of gathering, trading, and living together. One can imagine the same shoreline, many lifetimes ahead, filled with the creak of ships and the murmur of markets. As evening settles, the sky turns the pale orange of embers, and the sea reflects it in broken lines. A first fire is lit in the central pit, its glow reaching into the doorways of each shelter. People sit close, the warmth wrapping gently around them, the sound of waves just beyond the edge of light. In the shelter walls, the layered leaves rustle faintly with each breath of wind. When the night deepens, the village becomes a scattering of small, glowing shapes, each shelter holding the quiet breathing of its occupants. Outside, the sea continues, its endless rhythm, the same song it will sing when Vohemar becomes a name carried far across the ocean. Here, it is only a beginning, a simple shelter of leaves and logs, made with steady hands and the calm certainty that the land and sea together will provide. The southern coast of the island stretches wide beneath the late afternoon sun, pale and calm, as though it has been waiting all day for this quiet hour. Near Tulir, the ocean lies almost without motion, its surface smooth and glassy, reflecting the soft warmth of the sky. The tide has receded, exposing broad stretches of wet sand that shine like polished stone, each ripple holding the faint memory of passing waves. Far off, the horizon forms a thin, distant line, dividing water from sky, and between here and there, the sea shifts in slow, languid patterns, stirred only by the gentlest whisper of wind. This is a place that feels older than memory itself. Air carries a gentle warmth, softened by the scent of salt and the faint perfume of drying seagrass. The sand slips easily through fingers, soft and fine, almost like powder, and small shells lie scattered across it, each shaped over countless years by the patient caress of waves. Some shells curl in delicate spirals, their whorls intricate as carved ivory, while others are simple and small, glowing faintly like bone under the sun. Each one seems to hold a quiet history, a trace of the ocean's slow, eternal rhythm. Group has gathered along the shoreline without hurry. Some sit cross-legged, toes buried in sand. Others lean on elbows, reclining to watch the play of sunlight across the water. The late afternoon casts a mellow glow, stretching long shadows and highlighting the shimmer of tiny waves. There is no work to be done, no urgency to break the spell of this hour. Only the simple act of being present, feeling the sun's warmth, inhaling the mingled scents of sand and sea, listening to the soft rhythm of water lapping against the shore, a gentle reminder that time can, at least for a while, slow to the pace of the tide. Beyond the calm water, history drifts in. Tulier was once, and will be again, a point of meeting, a shore where ships from Asia and Africa found the same peace that rests here now. Traders would anchor in the shallows, their hulls rocking gently while the goods of two continents met. In woven baskets and clay jars, spices, ivory, beads, and stories would pass from hand to hand, each exchange marking the shore with another layer of connection. Today, there is no fleet, no market, only the ghosts of those journeys lingering. In the salt air, the idea of them, faint and without urgency, feels like part of the stillness. Somewhere in the distance, the call of a seabird carries over the flat water, a single note that fades almost before it can be noticed. The sea here wears a different face than the open ocean crossed to reach it. Instead of rolling swells and restless currents, there is a steady, measured rhythm. Water meeting land as gently as a whisper. The surface holds the reflection of the sky so perfectly that it is difficult to see where one ends and the other begins. Pale clouds drift above, mirrored below, and in between. The light glows with the warmth of late day. The people sit in loose clusters along the shore, their shadows stretching long and thin on the sand as the sun leans toward the horizon. One traces patterns absent-mindedly with a driftwood stick, spirals and lines that the tide will claim before morning, each stroke a quiet meditation. Another lets the sand slip slowly through fingers, watching the grains fall in a delicate shimmering stream, catching the fading sunlight for a moment before it disappears. There is no rush here, no urgency, only the rhythm of bodies moving with the sun, of minds attuned to the unhurried flow of the day. As the afternoon deepens, warmth gives way to a gentle coolness that creeps across the shore. The light softens, shifting from a strong golden glow to the delicate rose hue of early evening, casting everything it touches in a tender, almost reverent wash. The sea mirrors these changes, its surface folding in slow, subtle waves that carry the faint blush of the sky to the distant horizon. Even the wind seems to slow, rushing lightly over skin and hair, carrying the scent of salt and the faint tongue of wet sand. In this quiet, it is easy to imagine the first arrivals. Long, dark shadows of foreign ships glide silently toward the shore, sails heavy with scents of distant lands, spices, timber, and earth from far-off forests. Men step cautiously onto the sand, eyes sweeping the coastline for landmarks, bodies taut with anticipation, voices low but threaded with relief, at finding themselves at last within Tulier's sheltered waters. Though centuries have passed, their footsteps seem to linger faintly in the air, subtle impressions pressed into the sand, whispered beneath the continuous hum of waves. The shore holds these echoes, a memory of arrivals long gone, yet alive. In the quiet pulse of the present. As the sun sinks slowly, the first hints of dusk gather across the horizon. The water deepens to a muted, reflective shade, not stirred by wind or storm, but transformed by the fading light itself. The sand cools under hands and feet, a quiet reminder of the day's passage, and the air grows sharper, carrying a crispness that speaks of night's approach. Shadows lengthen, tracing the contours of the dunes and the gentle rise of the land behind the beach. The group remains where they are, still and contemplative, letting the day complete its slow, measured arc while the sea maintains its patient, enduring silence. Later, a fire will be kindled inland, its warmth and flickering light a new focal point. But for now, the shore itself serves as a quiet hearth. The horizon glows softly, a gentle ribbon of light that resembles embers scattered across the edge of the world. Sitting there, with the tide folding gently over itself and the hush of evening descending, it is easy to believe that nothing urgent waits beyond this moment. The shore is timeless, the sea eternal, and the air suspended between them holds a rare, perfect stillness, a place where one can simply rest and breathe in the vast, slow rhythm of the world. Night drapes itself over the northern coast like a slow, deliberate tide, folding the last warm hues of daylight into the deep, velvety expanse of sky. Shadows lengthen over the sand, stretching from dunes and driftwood alike, until the shore feels hushed, intimate, as though it has been waiting for this quiet moment. The fire, built earlier from gathered driftwood and scattered branches, burns low, glowing in a circle of soft embers. Its flickering light dances over the sand in tiny, restless patterns, mingling with the cool silver wash of the rising moon. The shore is calm, yet alive with sound. The ocean breathes in measured pulses, each wave rising with a gentle sigh, stretching thin over the pale sand, then receding with a quiet exhale back into the depths. Its rhythm is unhurried, timeless, steady in a way that speaks of ages and journeys long past. The water moves like a storyteller, repeating an ancient tale that has no beginning and no end, one the shore listens to without interruption. Above, the sky is a vast, unbroken canopy of stars, countless points of light spilling across the darkness. Their glow seems almost within reach, mirrored faintly on the water's gently rippling surface. The constellations that guided the journey here now shine with a different purpose. Once, they were markers of direction and promise, guiding toward an unseen horizon. Now, they are companions, quiet witnesses to this pause in the world, there, light reflecting the calm of the sea and the fire's warmth. Beneath their gaze, the coast, the waves, and the night feel bound together in a single, enduring hush, a moment of rest where the journey's weight dissolves into the steady pulse of water, fire, and starlight. The wind moves gently through the tall grasses beyond the dunes, carrying the faint scent of salt and earth. It strokes the flames so they lean and sway, and it carries with it a whisper of Madagascar's forests, the deep green breathing of a land that has accepted its new arrivals without question. Somewhere in the distance, the call of a night bird echoes once, then fades. The people are gathered loosely around the fire, though no one speaks. Words seem unnecessary in this place, where sea and wind are the only voices. Instead, they sit wrapped in woven cloaks, letting the warmth from the embers seep into them while their eyes drift between the flames and the endless horizon. Tonight, the ocean and the land move together in a quiet, seamless harmony. The wind, sweeping down from the highlands of Madagascar, mingles with the gentle breath of the Indian Ocean, weaving an invisible tapestry of motion and sound. It is a meeting repeated endlessly across time, one that has shaped the shores, carried vessels, and marked the passage of countless journeys, some remembered, others lost to the depths of history. Each gust, each ripple, seems to hum with the memory of those who have crossed these waters. Traders, fishermen, explorers, their lives echoing faintly in the rhythm of sea and wind as you gaze outward. A vast stretch of water seems to dissolve distance. The red earth of Africa, the palm-fringed inlets of India, the ancient harbors of Arabia, all feel bound by this same restless yet steady sea. The waves, tireless and even, link these distant coasts, each crest and fall, carrying the same pulse, the same quiet insistence that life continues, moves forward. On this shore, the ocean feels like a connector, a living thread tying faraway lands together. What once seemed remote now feels intimate, part of a single, unbroken whole. The rhythm of the water becomes a language, speaking of unity, endurance, and the shared heartbeat of the world. Every so often, a stronger wave arrives, its foam catching the moonlight before fading back into shadow. The sound is soft but full, like a deep breath drawn and released. The sand beneath bare feet holds the day's warmth, slowly giving it up as the night deepens. Some of the travelers lean back to rest on the cool ground, their gaze drawn upward. The stars seem to wheel slowly over them, though it is the earth, turning under their stillness. Others watch the fire, seeing shapes in the flames that shift and vanish before they can be named. There is no rush to sleep. The night itself feels like a kind of dreaming. The journey that began with the crackle of torches and the scent of resin now rests here, by a different fire, under a different sky. The sea has carried them through wind and rain, hunger and calm, loss and discovery, and now it keeps them company in peace. This is the moment where the voyage settles into memory, not in the tempests that tested skill or the uncertain days that stretched endlessly, but in the gentle convergence of water and land. The Indian Ocean, vast and timeless, traces pathways that have linked distant worlds for centuries. From the bustling harbors of Maziris to the quiet shores of Tulier, from the dragon trees of Socotra to Madagascar's high forests, these connections are not drawn on maps, but felt in the constant rhythm of waves, the whisper of wind, and the shared breath of ocean and air. Those who arrived here, long ago or recently, have become threads in this enduring tapestry. Their footprints may vanish from the sand, but their presence lingers in the subtle pulse of the shore, much as the tides themselves carry the memory of every vessel that has passed over them. The sea has always transported more than ships. It bears stories, hopes, and the quiet persistence of those who entrusted their journeys to its currents. Tonight, under the soft glow of moonlight and the steady warmth of fire, the ocean murmurs a lullaby. Its voice speaks of distance and closeness. A voyage is completed, and those still awaiting. The wind joins in, adding its gentle harmony, together composing a song not to stir or hurry, but to soothe, leaving all who listen cradled in its vast, eternal embrace. So close your eyes now. Let the sound of the waves draw you toward rest, and let the night carry you gently, as the ocean once carried them. Sleep well, and when the next voyage comes, may we meet again on another shore beneath another sky. Good night.